Hello? Okay. So my name's Emily Pott, and I'm a filmmaker here in Toronto. I recently graduated from Humber College's Bachelor of Film and Media Production. And this is sort of just a little project I worked on the side about ODSP and about the poverty that people are living in. And it often touches on medical assistance in death. Yeah, that's what sums me up. It's just a project I care a lot about. I grew up with two sisters who have disabilities, and so that brought me into the disability world. But ODSP is something a little bit separate from them that I care a lot about, and I want other people to care about as well.
Thanks, Emily. Okay, so I think maybe what we can do, Rod, is if it's okay, we'll have the panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll have folks come back and we'll watch the folks come back. Have the election finish off, and then we'll watch the documentary. Okay.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name's Mitchell Tremblay. I'm known online as ODSPoor, ODSP and then OOR. I'm a guerrilla advocate, a gonzo activist. My entire life has been destroyed by a lot of this underfunding, and so I've experienced privatized healthcare, homelessness 7 times, hospitalization 14 times. So if anybody has any questions, everything's allowed to be on the table. But I bring my lived experience and the voices that I hear in our community online and the social circles that I'm in to these types of events. We did a panel last year at U of T about this documentary, and I've been in Al Jazeera documentary about MAID, and a couple other appearances on TVO, CTV. Even Ben Shapiro was talking about me, even though I didn't want him to. So there's my information up there at the bottom there. I did start a podcast, and I did a season and a half of just me editing and interviewing a whole bunch of people from Canada, including Avis Favaro, who is a top health reporter from CTV News and W5. And I'm doing this all on my own. I'm not funded or affiliated with anyone. And so I just bring my lived experience as best I can.
All right, my name's Chris Kindy. I'm a case manager for Ontario Works, Halton and Norfolk. I've been a case manager there for about 9 years. I also work part-time at Canadian Mental Health Association. I'm passionate about social assistance and passionate about improving the quality of life. I struggle with epilepsy and mental health, and I know what it's like firsthand to be very close to being on that other side of the interview table. So it's important to make that change. And when I see people in this room, it inspires me for hope, because you guys are fighting for a better life and better support for everyone here. So thank you.
Hi everybody, it's very funny to see my face up there. That's what I look like under the mask. My name is Claudia. I'm from the Income Security Advocacy Center, which is a specialty legal clinic based in Toronto but has a provincial purview. We work on systemic issues relating to social assistance and workers' rights. We deal with a lot of benefit interaction issues. And my role, specifically at ISAC, I'm a community organizer, and I do communications work as well while I'm there. And it's kind of a dream job that I didn't know existed before I got this job. One of the directives is to go make friends. So that is why I'm here, to meet you all and communicate with you and connect with you. And also why I'm so lucky to be on this panel with other friends and allies who engage in community work with regard to increasing social assistance rates and improving the social assistance system in general. So thanks for having me.
Hello folks, my name is Brad Evoy. I'm the Executive Director with Disability Justice Network of Ontario. As mentioned on the slide, I'm a member of the Hollywood Mi'kmaq Nation, originally from Newfoundland. I've worked all across Ontario on a whole bunch of different things. I have cerebral palsy, high amplification, and diabetes. I'm also a former CUPE member, so I used to be on the Workers with the Disability Committee. I've been in rooms like these a few times here and there, so it's lovely to be back. And for folks who are unfamiliar with DJNO, we work on a whole bunch of different focuses, but in particular around social assistance, around housing, around group homes, around just care, and a whole bunch of other related pieces. So really happy to be here and excited to speak with all my fellow wonderful panelists.
That's great. So that's
So thank you for staying to watch. The one thing I did want to address is some folks might be like, why are we watching a documentary about ODSP? The reason why we wanted to bring this panel together is to talk about lived experiences, talk about service provision, talk about the advocacy work that we do. But it's also important to remember that there is a huge difference between the rates of Ontario Works and ODSP. And in folks that are struggling on ODSP, there is also additional struggles that folks are having on Ontario Works. And we think about housing providers, we think about managing wait lists, we think about tenancy issues, we think about all of those things. And how many folks do we know that we encounter on a daily basis that probably maybe should be applying to ODSP and just can't because of access, whether it be access to primary healthcare provider, or difficulty navigating their super complex system, or they've come up for medical review and they haven't been able to be re-adjudicated. So that's the rationale for showing the documentary. Also, I think it's a fantastic representation of lived experience. So if folks are okay, we're going to transition to the panel. The panel did introduce themselves. I'm going to try not to talk. That's my goal. I'm just going to ask a couple of questions to kind of start it off. And then we'll have the mics to kind of come around. If anybody wants to help out with that, we'll just, I see Melinda. Thank you. So what we'll do is maybe I'll just, if you want, I could maybe start with question 1, and then we can just kind of have an organic conversation of any questions that might come up for folks too. And I think, like Mitchell said, open book, right? So, and I know sometimes with a panel, there is that lived experience element that's often missing. So I'm hoping that through the interaction today, you'll find a great amount of value. Okay, so the first question is often one that we encounter through Ontario and through housing as well, is how do we counter public perceptions of social assistance and recipients? What are some myths that we often need to dispel or educate folks about?
So I can answer this. I guess it probably was a month ago, Doug Ford was on TV talking about people on Ontario Works, sitting on the couch, watching the Flintstones. That just shows how out of touch he is. Like, Flintstones, has been on TV for 30 years. And to give that negative connotation, because everybody who's on Ontario Works or ODSP has a story. They're a son, they're a daughter, they're the mom or a father. And you're missing on that element. And for me as a caseworker too, every time I'm talking to someone the first time, and I know their cortisol is through the roof, they are stressed, but tell me your story. This is a safe place. I believe in you. And trying to change that perception of the program. And I think it's going to take more time. It's going to take education. It's going to take investment in that program. And just last week, so we have file audits, and my supervisor was looking over one of my files, and she's like, now I notice he's paying $700 rent. You better do some high accommodations. I said, no, I am not asking that question. Obviously, someone's getting some other help. And he has a hydro bill too. I said, don't pay hydro, because when it just gets disconnected, we'll help you with the leak program. Make sure that takes care of it. But it's the way the program has been rolled out for years. We need a systematic change.
Go ahead, if you want.
Sorry, I don't usually sit on panels, but I am very excited to be here. One thing that I forgot to mention was, I'm here from ISAC, but we're connected to 70 plus legal clinics across the province. So when I was invited to this panel, I sent them the questions. I was like, what do you guys want them to know? Like, how do I answer these questions in an actually useful way for people who are doing the work? And, I got a response from a clinic colleague who works in the north. And so maybe is it okay to just read her response? I like that aspect of my job, to be the conduit, bring the clinic concerns to the public and bring the public's concerns to my clinic colleagues. So one thing that I wanted to highlight here that she said was, I think people need to better understand how difficult it is to break the cycle of intergenerational poverty. And everyone's heard this argument, and I know some people are tired to hear it, but I truly believe they're tired of hearing it because they don't understand it. If you were raised in a middle class or well-off family and never went through financial hardship in your life, it's extremely hard to understand the deep psychological impact extreme poverty can have on you. Getting out of the cycle is not easy. It requires a complete psychological change, which will often be achieved through intense mental health work and therapy, which again, you can't afford if you can't even buy food for your kids at the end of the month. People who've been raised under these extreme poverty conditions don't necessarily see a light at the end of the tunnel. For them, financial abundance is just not available to them, and it's ingrained in their mind that the current situation is all they'll ever know. The system really doesn't encourage people to have hope that things will change, to the point we just heard. One thing that she kind of flagged here was, you need incredible strength of character to keep coming back and trying to exist under these extreme conditions, and a system that is, there's a lot of surveillance worked into the system. And it can feel easier just to go along with emotions and be pulled along. People often see a success story with one person who used to be very poor, suddenly makes it big and becomes rich, and then they imagine that it's possible for literally everyone. And if you're still poor, it's because you want to be. That's just not the case in reality. So I think there's probably a lot of shared sentiment in this room. And if I'm saying things that you agree with or you've heard of before, or it seems like, oh yeah, obviously, I think that's a major thing that I'm hearing from my clinic colleagues as well. That intergenerational poverty cycle is so difficult to break, and having compassion and reaching deep for that well of compassion that we all have within us is incredibly important.
I guess so. What I'd like to add to that is my experience. When I was 18, I found myself homeless, and I was on OW. Obviously, that's where you have to start because you're not automatically accepted for ODSP. So I found myself on the streets of Guelph after being in Homewood and being diagnosed with social anxiety, generalized anxiety, PTSD, borderline and histrionic personality disorders, and major depressive disorder, without any family support. Getting the $700 on OW, not having enough for rent and food. At that point in time, this is going back to 2001, so times were different. But the $733 for the past couple of decades has never been adequate. It's never been enough. We all know that. We can all agree on that. Even the politicians know that. And so what I had to do was I had to do sex work. And I'm ashamed to say it, of course I am, but that's survival. That's what we're out there doing. I'm talking to people who have been involved in sex trafficking, people who are sex workers right now. I'm talking to people in BC, out east, that are still doing this to survive on their versions of these types of things. But for those 7 years, I was trapped on OW, aiming for ODSP, hoping that I would get it, jumping through hoops, getting these interviews and trials where they're putting me down and they're sitting me in front of almost like a retired judge, and I have to have a lawyer and I'm trying to represent myself. And meanwhile, none of the healing has started. So you're adding those 7 years to my childhood trauma. I'm already behind. And now you add another 20 years that I've just lived through, being homeless 7 times, hospitalized 14 times. I had cataract surgery, double cataract surgery last year where I had to go through the privatization system. And I'm watching 80-year-olds who are having panic attacks being let into credit booths. And you tie all this in together, and it's the one thing that we said in the video, and that is that poverty accrues interest. I'm costing all of you so much more because you didn't help me then. And there are so many other people out there like that right now. We're talking about kids with autism. 1 in 4.5 kids are being helped by the OAP program right now. That's 61,000 people on a wait list. And guess what all of them are? They're going to be poverty accruing interest. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. And I am the lived example of it. And I'm doing this because I have no self-value or self-worth anymore. I am still aiming for MAID. They've just delayed it to St. Patrick's Day 2027. So I'm facing all of these anxieties. I've been freaking out since the 5th, since I got the email. And I came all the way from Guelph, and transit is horrible for me. But I filmed it all on a blog, and I'm bringing the disability community with me so that they can see what advocacy is like, because I can't keep doing this. And a lot of us, And the community can't keep doing this, especially losing over and over and over provincially, federally, municipally. It's not just one government, it's all failing us.
And I guess the thing I would add to this too, for folks in the room who are union members, right, or members of CUPE, is that folks on social assistance are also your members, right? These are folks who are former members, who are retirees, who are injured workers, who are injured in their workplaces. This is not something that's separate from union solidarity. Often, these programs get framed as a state charity or a gift to our communities. But we can't be measuring ourselves in our communities with the bosses measuring, right? We have to think about the broader solidarity that exists between, all of us, but in the CUPE context, between yourselves, your former members, and those in the community that you work with, right? If we're going to take these systems apart and really bring justice for our communities, we have to know who we're up against, and that's the ruling class that keeps us in these spaces and places and tries to keep us isolated.
Thank you. I know that one of the biggest things around is sharing vulnerability, and I know that can be extremely difficult. I'm going to ask like a very broad question, but I'd love you to make it specific to you or your circumstance. I'd love to incorporate maybe some housing pieces for folks around income security, because there is folks in the room that do both Ontario Works housing supports and then also do focus on childcare as well. So why do you feel that raising social assistance rates is important?
To me, raising social assistance rates is very important because, there are fellow people. I never really was, I didn't have a lot of experience prior to making this film about sort of the world of welfare and of different social assistance rates. I grew up pretty upper middle class, and so this was something very new to me that only I sort of found myself diving into because my sisters are disabled, and so that opened the broader world of disability to me. But I think from a very early age, I always sort of felt like everyone sort of, the things you're taught in kindergarten or Sunday school, where everybody should be treated the same, everybody deserves the same love that you give to other people. And to me, it doesn't work in my brain that we don't also do that up in government, where we have people who do not have support systems, and they then don't have financial support systems. So it never really clicks in my brain as to why we're letting people sit on the streets. Why are we letting people? Why are we not caring for other people? And maybe that's naive of me to constantly be thinking of that. But that's just one question that I've always asked myself: is why are we okay with this? And why are we okay with this being the norm?
So why is it important? Well, 733 for a month. And we talk about inflation, we talk about the cost of living. It's even hard to comprehend. So when you provide, you raise those rates, you give a basic living income, you can step back and think, instead of, where am I going to sleep tonight? Oh my God, I'm getting a disconnect notice on my phone, and I'm going to get evicted. When you have money that you can actually pay your bills, you can work on life. You can work on yourself. It should be so simple. Like, we are a G7 country, yet we're seeing more and more increase in mental health, poverty, addiction. And the solution can be invest in people. Like, it should be easier.
I'm just like nodding here, I'm like, oh, what do I have to add here? I don't know, these are all such great points, and I think that point that, Emily made too really resonated with me. Like, I think sometimes I drive, I'm in downtown Toronto with relatives, and we'll pass by someone who's on the street, and I remember I was in the car with my aunt, and she was like, oh, that man has no shoes on, and I was like, yep. And you get desensitized, without meaning to, because it's not okay. It's not okay for us to live like this. We live in an extremely wealthy country. And an extremely wealthy province, as evidenced by the government sending out $3 billion checks to everybody just a short month or two ago. Hard to know, how time is working these days. But just, in response to why do you feel that raising social assistance rates is important? Well, one of the things we deal with at ISAC is the clawback issue. So, there are often other programs that you can access, and income support programs that end up going into their bank accounts and coming right out in another way. And as much as I want to see social assistance rates raised, I also want to see an end to punitive clawbacks. We hear from injured workers who feel very strongly about how they've paid their dues, and that's a whole other conversation about deserving and undeserving. But they feel like they've paid their dues and they are left with in extreme poverty, in pain often due to their disabilities, and they're just we say there has to be a better way. We have a lot of very clear solutions, and I really like how Mitchell put it. That poverty compounds interest.
Accrues interest, yeah.
Accrues interest, yeah. Sorry, not a bank. That's kind of a perfect way to put it, right? We invest in people up front, and we don't take things away from them that on paper they have earned. And I think a lot of problems will be fixed around that.
Go ahead.
So I guess the way I'm gonna look at this, friend, is I want to do a bit of an exercise. Everybody, just close your eyes for a minute. I want you to imagine your bills. I want you to imagine your rent. Okay? Now I want you to imagine for a second what would happen to you and your family if you get injured on the job and WSIB screws you around. And like Mitchell said, you have to wait to get on ODSP. How are you and your family and those in your life going to actually manage with those things you're imagining in your mind on $733 a month, or with family rates that are very high? That's the reality for every person that we're talking about here today. That's the stuff that folks spoke about in the film. That is the experience that transposed into your life. And I'm saying it this way because I really want to get across, right, that these experiences aren't distanced. This isn't something that can't, come into folks who are in positions of unionized labor and what have you, right? This is an experience and an impact that can happen to anyone in this room. And with the broader economic uncertainty that exists in our broader society right now, and with the fact that this government that we have right now is frankly aiming to undermine every social structure that we have, puts us all at greater risk. And for the folks who are already there, those risks are magnified yet again. Right? There's a reason why when we talk about things from the Federal Housing Advocate, they say, that there's been a constant increase in disabled folks who are unhoused over the last period during the pandemic, and that the only thing that only kind of turned some of those numbers around were for the folks among our communities who could access service, which was certainly not everybody. Right? So, we've been hearing a lot of campaigns around labor, particularly around tariffs and other related things, and we've had a few conversations with folks that have been good around looking at how, for example, like expansions to EI isn't enough. We need to be looking at sustained, real, permanent raises to the rates. And, you know, even folks now looking at broader tariff emergency related stuff, they're proposing $600 a week for folks, you know, on EI and through other benefit processes. That would be alone revolutionary for some of these systems. And compare that again to what folks receive on ODSP, OW, and I would even bring into this the even lower rates of folks who are on institutional allowances, who are in different institutions across this province. So again, I really want people, if you can just think about this in terms of not just, you know, that this is happening out there, right? This is a union issue. This is something that your union is already fighting on. We're very grateful that CUPE is part of this fight. But it's something that is a broader labor issue.
All right, so those are all really good points. The only thing I could really add to that is, again, from my own lived experience and from what I hear from the community over and over again, for me personally, being homeless so many times, losing that trust in society, it led to further mental illnesses. So I was diagnosed with agoraphobia and bulimia. So there's times where I'm too scared to leave my house because I'm scared I'm going to lose it, or they're going to change the lock, or something's going to happen. And this is not ancient history. I was just homeless 4 years ago. And that's when I got priced out of Toronto and I had to move to Guelph. I would love to still be here, but I can't afford to be in this city, not on these rates. And so the other half to that would be, we're the canaries in the coal mine. We are the bottom floor of existence in this country, and we're telling you we're dying. We've lost Jay, whose son came on and said that she took her own life. Ryan Leifel, who is known as Rolling Enigma, just passed in this past week. Erin, who's known as Vegan Love Bunny. Now that's a case in Ottawa where she was being abused by her landlord and her neighbors online, being trolled. She was at the end of her rope dealing with chemical sensitivities, and so she couldn't find housing for that. And she was about to go homeless to the point where there had been a sheriff at the house who was putting the sign on her door. And so she took her own life, and they came and took her elderly cat, and the cat was put down, and within 12 hours, an entire household was gone. And she was begging online. If you want any examples of tweets of someone begging and screaming, yelling at their mayor, I think it was Sutcliffe or something like that, yelling at the provincial, yelling at the federal, everything she could do, she did. Vegan Love Bunny would be here right now if it wasn't for these rates being so low. And so that's what I would add in, is that we are dying. We are dying. Sorry, turn it off.
I just want to add quickly that one thing I've been seeing and sort of thinking about a lot recently is that the disability community is a community and a minority group that anybody can become a part of at any point in their life. And as much as you shouldn't just care about something because it could affect you, also you should care about it because it could affect you. And this isn't some sort of thing you can ignore because it is a very possible outcome in any of our lives. If we don't have the financial support or the community support, this could be us.
So I know one of the common questions is around, what are some of the concerns around raising social assistance rates? So how could you respond to that question, right? I think that's sometimes one of the questions that we get. One, we get the rates are so low, but then we might share what we do maybe at a party, and then people will give us the misperceptions that they have around social assistance recipients and things like that. So what are some, responses that you might have if somebody was to ask you about, what are, some of the common concerns around raising social assistance rates?
Well, you hear people say, well, we can't afford it. And I just think the government has shown that we can, and that they're totally fine with spending money on things that they think are important. I came up with a short list, but I'm sure we could brainstorm a very long list of things that the government spends money on that, like canceled contracts. I have a long memory. I don't know if it's the Sicilian in me or what, but I don't forget things. So, 2018, the Ford government came in, canceled a bunch of clean energy contracts that cost money, and that was money spent on nothing. It's gone. We have public dollars that go into the pockets of developers. There's a variety of scandals that have been spoken about in the news over the last several years. I know, this is probably a Toronto issue, but it impacts everybody across Ontario, given that different cities in Ontario are subsidizing the development of Ontario Place and the building of a mega spa, which is going to be run by a private company. So, the government spends money. They spend money on things that they think are important. And when I think about that, it's extremely disappointing and disheartening to think that, this isn't going to be the top, this isn't making a cut on things that we're spending money on. I think, just very quickly, the other thing I wanted to say, I also have done a bit of policy work, have a bit of a policy background. We monitor frequently how much money the government is putting into success and all these different programs. And what we also see is the money going to programs and not to clients. And so it's another point that I think it's hard to make it a casual party situation, but the government is spending money. Is it getting to people as it should be? I don't think so.
I'll make it quick. So I guess in terms of common concerns related to social assistance rates, again, I think it is that question of, we can't afford it. Why are we spending money on this? People should work. You hear that from Doug Ford all the time, right? But the reality is, look at the kind of tax breaks and the funding and the direct subsidy that gets given to industry and the bosses and Galen friggin' Weston to keep your prices high for food and to undercut every aspect of our lives and to privatize basic resources, in and around the province and the rest of the country. So, folks, for me, I think it's important for us to look at this from the perspective of, benefits shouldn't be for rich folks. We should be trying to aim for something that actually benefits the whole working class.
Okay, so on that note, I think we're going to welcome the guest.
Thank you. I just wanted to say hi. Hi to the panelists as well. Give a round of applause to these great panelists. And I just wanted to say, not to take up too much of your time, but I just wanted to appreciate you all. I've been going from room to room to meet with the different sections, and I just want you all to know, if you don't hear this enough, but as the CUPE division that represents social service workers, you provide the services that our communities need. You lift up the people and you work for the people that often are amongst those who need it the most. So thank you for the work you do. Genuinely, a big thank you for everything. And as you're out there fighting for the people you provide services for, know that I'm fighting for them as well, and I'm fighting for you. And I'm never going to stop. I always got your back, okay? Appreciate you. Thank you. And if you're okay with it, because I've been offering it to everyone else, if you're down with it, we could do a quick group picture. I would love to do it. If you're down, let me know. Yes? Okay, cool. Yay, okay, cool. So I'll gather around maybe in the middle and then kind of cozy up, and then we'll take a little group picture together. All right, I'll come right there in the middle. Okay, thanks so much. Appreciate you. Thanks for giving me the mic for a couple of seconds. Appreciate you. Okay, thanks all.
So I would just, as we just wrap up, I just want to thank the panelists. It's been awesome. Bringing it from ODSP and Ontario Works and what the experiences are. And I just want everybody to give a round of applause for our
Jagmeet Sign. I've been a case worker and now I'm coaching for here. I just wanted to point that in 1995, at that time, shelf rate was $440. Today, we struggle with that. I think sometimes that just means me that of all these years, and I worked in social systems, that we can't even get up to the rate we had in 1995. You know, and I think this is where it's stopping. The entrance is on it, that's great, but you know, we're not going to help us.
This is actually what I'm we really haven't got back up. We are still in deep last year. Across this country, there are a whole bunch of things. When it comes to like we really are still trying to get about rules that money cares. And so like to build up a whole time, we do the thing that great to have we're all very appreciative of being able to be here and being this message, being share. But I guess the one thing I say is that our organization. How is it called? Local daycare.
And there's a blueprint in this moment. We are on the opposite side. We refer your clients to legal clinics for support. They're problem solvers. They're hardworking householders, just like you are. We're all here trying to get, support for people in the program. And I said it's some extra. You're also very good at keeping your confidence. So you have to stay very thankful. Don't want to see things or any other things, perhaps. We would love to hear from you. I know I said to look at your team and your local clinic, they want to hear support, you and your getting up your clients. So just want to see what that.
Sure, yes, I actually wanted to add on that, because I brought so much to spare the room earlier. I want to talk about mutual aid. I don't know if all of you have heard of mutual aid, but it's something that we have had to create online in our social network on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and Blue Sky, you name it. And what mutual aid is that we reach out at the end of the month, usually on ODSP, we run out of groceries the last week. We go on the post, I need $50 going to buy hot dogs, buns, bottle of ketchup, and some cheese slices. And in a very good Samaritan, anywhere in Canada, can you transfer me that money, or they can send it to a GoFundMe, or they can do any form of interaction. And so, to answer that to you, it's really a dire situation. We're talking ODSPoor, ODSP. Help them to go online, help them to use hashtag mutual aid, and help them to look for those people. And so that we don't flood the system with just people looking for money. Tell people you know who have money about mutual aid, so that they can go on there and send just $20, $50, $10. Sometimes people need a ride to the hospital, and they're on their way for $7. Mutual aid. Hashtag mutual aid. You'll see it. There's an amazing bunch of people who are in the communities who are completely free. They raise as much money as they can. Sometimes they're selling art. Sometimes they're selling all of that. Right back to the question. So that's cutting out the middleman. We're not giving the pastoral nurse the ones like disability without poverty. Those kinds of places to take the money and putting it into rent and paying a lot for too much money. But this mutual aid program, it has saved them so many times. And there are other people who can attest to that. Even address clients, they might hurt.
So just last year, we put together, we were a Dragon Boat team. So we got together, and it was a fundraiser for cancer that showed that CUPE 4700 is the best in your community. And it's also a fun day where members can get together. Like our people. But these events bring us together. And even issues such as hopelessness or mental health, there's fundraising. There's a walk every year. It's called Hope Side of the Year. Encourage you. Get your locals out there. Do a walk. It was so wonderful to see that in the last 3 years, the amount of CUPE locals has doubled each time. You don't need to be as crazy as you broke out. I'm not in great shape and also with my home. But I wanted to make a statement that homelessness is a crisis and we need to do something more. And by that gets media attention, that gets the local, it shows that local CUPE members are out there. And also too, when you're driven by a local newspaper, you can say 733. That's what people are receiving because people don't know it. So since COVID happened, I've been working hybrid. So 2 days I work from home, and a lot of friends come in my office and they're like, "This is a great job." That's true. Yes, but people don't know. Like even my own wife and father, they don't have the concept of what people are living on. So I think that's the type of advocacy that we have there. To let every Ontarian know that 733 is a disgusting amount of money. And I don't know what we do about that. 63-ish, but overall, that needs to change. And awareness, listening, and I hope that we build locals together and help with that catastrophe. Because I know these community building events help bring our locals together. And also, too, as Ron said before, we love food, we will gladly cover that cost of food. So, something to consider.
Having someone on the other line who is really at their wit's end, and you are being represented. You are the representative of a system that is like broken and not working well, and not working for certain people who are concerned. And so that's like a huge discussion way. So I'm really clear that everybody in this person has to deal with the weight of this system that is not working. This is part of why I was so happy to hear that we're come together and continue to be part of it. Because it gives you a space to and there's a threshold, all this technology. I know that there are problems with the system, like, I can't build. Organizing, making sure your colleagues, with other people who are in community, who are allies, who are other advocacy teams, who all see that there needs to be change. And you shouldn't be bearing the brunt of the problems with the system. So make sure to take your time as well. Step back,
and I appreciate the panel, I appreciate everything you guys said, but we need ODSP to extend that work top up beyond since it's not working. And we're seeing we're seeing our on-house population. They're not getting house because of now all the reasons everybody talks about. Now I just had an 81-year-old that's been homeless for 30 years. That was at the hospital the other day. So it's a major issue. I'm not sure the solution, but there's many, many factors. Not always right to handle just so there's one thing that going on a lot of reviews called the National Disability Insurance Program. Here in Canada, Australia has a National Disability